Chair Song. Mr. Gibbs just gave you a packet of information. You should have your chair remarks in there, so you may start the meeting when you're ready.
The Nevada Youth Legislature will now come to order. I would like to take a moment to thank you for giving me this opportunity to serve as the chair of the NYL and to congratulate Vice Chair Hart. I look forward to working with you throughout the first year of the 2025-2027 NYL term. The NYL is at 2 locations, so I will do my best to ensure we are inclusive and that all members are recognized and are able to participate in the training. Itinerary item 2 is training regarding accountability for messages presented to the public. Senator Wiener has gifted us with a copy of her book, Advancing Yourself Through Media Relations, which she will reference during her presentation. I will now turn the training over to Senator Wiener.
Thank you very much, Chair Song. This is going to be like the fast track speed version of looking at the highlights of that handbook that I was grateful to be able to gift you from the nonprofit I founded, Public Service NV. And so we are pleased to share this information with you. To begin with the introduction of message accountability, it's very important for you to appreciate, understand, and respect that anything coming out of your mouth is something for which you are accountable. And when I was press secretary for Congressman Reed, Harry Reid, one of the very first things I shared with him before we really had email, we got it while I worked for him, is that whatever comes out of your mouth, and this is a quote in the handbook, whatever you say, and this is the same for you, decades later, is something that can follow you for the rest of your life. As I often say, your quotes have an infinite life. Remember that before you utter the first word. Pretty significant. And today, in the age of the technology that we live in, and it's exponentially growing and expanding in ways we can't even predict, our messages are being moved beyond any expectation and often beyond our own management of where it goes. So be very, very cognizant, be aware before you say anything that you are willing to be accountable for what it is you're sharing with others. As leaders, as youth legislators and leaders in other roles, and beyond this program for the rest of your life, it is very important to be responsible for your spoken message and written message, or any way you convey your message. And think about that before you say anything, because you might be in control of the first transmission, and beyond that, you have no idea where it's going and how it could be modified. So the best you can do is transmit the most effective, meaningful, authentic message you can on the first round. And then what happens thereafter, you don't always have control, but you can manage the message as it leaves your body. And so it's very important that you recognize that as in message accountability, that there's the message where you are the conveyor of information, maybe as a speaker, and sometimes you are the respondent to questions, maybe in an interview or with your town hall meetings, which you will have, where you're answering other people's inquiries or their curiosities and you're responding. You have a different way of doing both, but for both, you need to be accountable and responsible, because you are the one that they are seeking this information from, and you are in a position of authority and have a responsibility that requires that you be at the highest level, the presenter of accurate, thorough, responsible information sharing. So on page 15 in your handbook, you will see before you begin, there's some tips there, some suggestions there. And I want you to know that throughout my sharing this, think of yourself as the expert, the spokesperson. You are the expert wherever you are. And so people are looking to you for that status of knowledge. Honor that. And the thing you want to be prepared for is if you are not the right person, be honest about that and share that too. Often when I would be asked questions, I might not be the best person. I'm not going to make it up as I go to try to wiggle my way through it and think I can fake my way through it. If you aren't the right person, then pass it on to the person who is, because you're going on the record. Whether it's official or unofficial, you're being held accountable for what you share. So share what you know, and if you don't know, be accountable by passing it on to someone who does. Now, I'm going to give you a technique later on where you can still stay engaged in the question by what I call bridging, and I'll explain that a little bit later. Sometimes as we are sharing messages and information, it happens to all of us. We have the experience with media phobia. I say media phobia because it's a media handbook, but it's communication phobia. And a lot of things can show up when we're in that environment. The fears that get in the way of clarity in sharing information. And we can experience that when we're seeking the opportunity to provide information and when we're responding to other people's inquiries. So often we get in either or, and we're sometimes with our message, we want to either raise the returns. In others, we want our message to elevate a situation by what it is we share. Sometimes we want our message to reduce the risks of outcomes that might be negative, but we want to reduce the negativity of them. Either way, we want to bring the best results with the information that we have. So in your handbook, you'll find building relationships on page 26, and that helps you work through the different situations that you might experience and learning techniques that work for you and your style of communication in working with populations. I cannot underestimate the importance of being prepared in advance for anything that people might ask you. And I will teach you this over and over again, because since I wrote that handbook decades ago and have worked with it in the professional environment as a trainer and a consultant and a crisis management person, one of the best ways to prepare when you're in the response mode is to run through in advance questions that you might be asked and put the sting in them. Put the stinging words in it. Put the stinging questions that might come at you. Because if you can come up with that in advance in the response mode, then you've already addressed it. Someone else cannot hurt you with it because you've already exposed yourself to it. And then you answer the question. The first time I did this with Congressman Reed, and I just decided I needed to prepare him, you won't know this, but it's very historic. Korean Airlines 007 was shot down by a Russian jet pilot. And there was a congressman on that flight. So we presumed that it might, the bringing down of that airplane might have involved something about Congress. So I had to get him ready to respond to questions that could be very, very difficult because there was a member of Congress on the flight. So I went into my office. We didn't have computers for everybody. So I was on a, manual typewriter. And I wrote questions that if I were interviewing him, this is what I would ask him with some stinging language. And then I sat down and I answered those questions. Not that I would answer for him, but it was a place to start. That was one of the best experiences I ever had in preparing and growing a technique to prepare for interviews or conversations. So this is a skill, message accountability, that you can take anywhere. Prepare in advance. And I can tell you that at least 90% of the things that you prepare for, if you're thorough, you'll be ready for it. And then the other 10% are so off the wall, sometimes there's no way you could think your way into that. Think ahead, be prepared. And I can tell you that when you're preparing this way, the first word you change on your answer as you're editing or reviewing is the second chance you don't get if you try to wing it, try to ad lib it, try to fake it, oh, I can do it. That's the second chance you don't get because you've already uttered that word. So think about that. And you can do this right now. As leaders, this is an important skill for you to have. I want to spend some time on nonverbal and what I've created the word transverbal and verbal communications. Nonverbal, and I'm going to address this as a speaker, but it's equally important as the person as you're standing there responding to questions. These skills are important both when you're asserting a message as well as responding to a message. So whether you're in front of an audience or you're in front of a town hall answering a question. So speaker or respondent, these are very important skills and techniques. So in your handbook, pages 55 to 57, you'll find this. Body language or nonverbal. This is amazing how many people understand this and appreciate this in creating a visual message. Again, accountability. You want to align what you look like and how you present yourself with the words that you're going to be sharing, because your physical imagery is part of your message accountability. So 55% when you're person to person, or you can see each other. What comprises this? Posture, how you sit and how you stand. People may not be conscious as they're observing you, but it's going to make an impression on people. And this is often with nonverbal, you haven't said anything, and likely this is all about what you're showing people about who you are. So posture, walking, standing, sitting. People observe how you respond in posture, how you're responding to other people who are talking. We grow great impressions of how people message their engagement to us through their nonverbal communication. Facial expressions, authenticity, open and accessible. Show people that you're open to listening to what it is they're sharing. Be available, that facial openness. Gestures. It's interesting that often when gestures are in conflict with what you're saying, so that people will believe what you're showing them, not what you're telling them. I gave a presentation, a training early in my consulting career, and I gestured inappropriately, and the people who put the program together walked out. I had to have lunch with them to explain that's not the message I shared. But I said, oh, gee, I can't do it because I'm pretty careful to be in consistent physical as well as spoken word. But anyway, my gesture did not synchronize with what I said. And he saw the gesture and wasn't listening to what I was saying. And he was very unhappy because they were out of sync. And he had an entirely different interpretation of what I was sharing. So I had to clear that up. And what a learning experience that was. So I grew from that. Clothing. Dress according to what it is you want, how you want to complement the message that you want to convey to other people. The legitimacy, the authenticity, the integrity, how you are in sync with the message that you're sharing, because that's going to be visual imagery that people are going to connect with what it is that you're conveying to them. You should complement, not compete. I remember early on, I had a client who was determined to wear a cowboy boots at every event, and periodically a very large cowboy hat that overshadowed his face where you could get a lot of his messaging. And I said, that's your decision. If that's your signature, that's your decision. I just ask you, what is it you want people to remember about your experience with them? In terms of the message accountability, what about that exchange do you want them to walk away with? And he was so convinced that he'd be memorable because of his wardrobe. People did not remember what he stood for and the message, because remember, he had a big cowboy hat and he had different boots for every suit. That's lovely if that's what he wanted them to take away from the conversation. But that he wanted them to know more, but he wasn't giving them the opportunity because he was letting his wardrobe outperform his message. So you just want them to be synchronized. One thing that we've learned, especially with pandemic, is distance or proximity. And things are different now. We do elbow bumps or fist bumps, but we used to do handshakes and hugs, and we're maybe coming back to that. But you want to be careful here too, in terms of your body language, in knowing the person that you're sharing this communication with. So often I will say, even if you don't handshake with someone you're meeting for the first time, imagine a handshake distance as the distance you would keep, not too far, not too close, so that you can create that relationship for that experience where you can comfortably share messaging and your accountability as the presenter or the response person. But if you get too close, people are uncomfortable. And if you're too far, they're uncomfortable. Now, there are situations, if you're at a podium or if you're on stage, those are situations and environments where that's expected to be more distant. Just be careful about getting too close to people and you'll know they're uncomfortable. And what happens when you're uncomfortable? You shut down, right? Yeah, get away. This isn't appropriate for what we're doing. I'm too uncomfortable. Eye contact, you want to make sure that you connect with people eye to eye, eyes to the soul. Don't stare people down, but make eye contact and connect. When I give presentations in front of an audience, the first thing I do when I get up to a microphone is that I will span the entire audience before I start, because I have connected with everyone in that audience, and we have that connection going forward. So don't stare people down, but you do want to connect. One that people often don't talk about, but I do, and that's smell, odor, perfume, whatever. Don't underdo it, don't overdo it, because that can be a distraction. Use good judgment and balance. Avert what I call visual detours. And these are using your body language or using these visual detours are often exaggerated or overextended. For example, over gesturing. That detracts, or standing there closed arm. Whatever through your body language becomes exaggerated becomes distracting. And that creates a detour from the message that you want to share. So so let's talk about the transverbal. This is the vocal quality. And I made this up, not made it up, but I came up with the definition so that we had some consistency in the language. It's really the vocal bridge between that connects the words and the message, the words and what it is you want to share, and how you transmit. So what comprises vocal quality or transverbal, which is 38%. 38%. Body language, nonverbals, 55% when you're one-on-one. Transverbals about 38%. Now, let's consider the percentages here. And so, however, if you are using your voice only on a telephone, let's say, it can be up to 100% because I can't see your body. I'm only hearing the voice. So anyway, what comprises the transverbal? Pitch. So fluctuate your voice, keep it in a range that's pleasant, but let your voice have some life and energy to it. So pitch, and let the pitch match your emotion and your feelings. So let it be relevant and aligned with what's really going on with your message. Your pace, be very aware, alert to, and this is really important, especially when you can't see the people, pace your message so that the other person can stay with you. You need people who talk too fast, lose the listener, and people who talk too slow can lose the listener too. So pace it and pay attention to the person you're sharing your message with so that you have them with you all the time. And if not, pause so they can catch up with you, or ask a question. Is there something about what I've shared that you might want to know more? Engage them, find a way to bring them back in. Diction, be articulate, and be careful that you don't swallow your words. Be very careful that as you share, and remember, I've taught many programs to hundreds of people over the years. And this is an example, media relations. I've taught several hundred people from this handbook. But what I know is every time I share a message, I may have taught it again and again and again, and it's easy to get bored, and you could hear it in a voice, right? We've had teachers, I've taught this for 20 years, you're the 21st year. We've had that, right? What I know as a speaker and as a communicator, and I'm sharing it with you, share your message, even if you live it, sleep it, dream it, eat it for lunch. That person hearing it, that audience receiving your message, often is hearing it for the first time. And this is your opportunity to be the transmitter of this invaluable information for them hearing it the first time, even if you've shared it 200 times. So put yourself in the energy and position of those receiving rather than you as the deliverer. Re-energize yourself for those who are receiving what it is you want them to hear, to learn, to grow through. Pausing is critical. Pausing is critical for many reasons. To bring the listener back, to add emphasis to what you've just said, to invite them with that pause if they have questions, that they can engage you as the presenter. It can also add drama. There's a lot of things the pause can do. Engage it where it's meaningful. And breathe. Breathe. Take a breath here and there. That helps. Don't spit it all out. Spit it all out. Speak naturally and know that you're presenting this, again, to someone who may be hearing it for the first time. Now, that's all how you present the words. So we're up to 93%. 7% words. We think, wow, I have a great vocabulary. I know what I'm doing. Words are 7% of your message. Now, if you're only writing, they're substantially more. I'm not minimizing writing. I'm a writer. But in the vastness of that one-on-one communication, all those other pieces are significantly more relevant in that moment when you're having that exchange of information. So this is words, the verbal. Be careful about the length and choice of the words. Please do not select words in order to impress people with how smart you are. Select the most appropriate words that are relevant to your message. This is message accountability. That are relevant to your message, that you can be held responsible for, and that in the context of what you are saying have meaning so you can move your whole message forward. There are a lot of people who use very big words, and what happens to the listener? They shut down. They're not impressed. Don't speak to impress people with how clever you are. You're all brilliant. We know that. So let's put that aside and let's work on the mission of sharing message accountability that has relevance in what you want to present and has relevance to the people who are listening. And you're going to learn about listening skills, so we'll tie them together. But your message accountability is conveying something that's important, that you are the right person to convey it, the most important person in this moment, and you make it meaningful and relevant and essential and doable for the people who are receiving the message that you're sharing. So use words properly, use colorful words when they're appropriate. One of the things that I work with, vocal detours, they are zero value words, vocal detours. And these are words or phrases that interrupt or distract the listener. We do it all the time. And once you hear this, you're going to hear it for the rest of your life. I'm going to give you some examples. And you're going to say, oh, I do that all the time. They get in the way because you're uncomfortable with what you're saying or you don't know where you're going again. Examples. Well, here's one. You know. Okay, like, basically, whatever, anyway. So how many have used any one of these or more than one? Mm-hmm. And once you're aware of them, you become very conscious of them. So what is your alternative to a vocal detour? Anybody have an idea? I've already given it to you, but you didn't put it in the context here. What can you do in lieu of using a vocal detour when you don't know where to go? Yes, youth legislator Lynn. Pause or silence. Mm-hmm. Because often we use vocal detours because we don't know where to go from here, or we're talking so quickly we can't catch up with ourselves, or they're bad habits. They're bad habits. And I know that you have some expressions that I don't use because I haven't practiced them. I haven't picked them up in conversation, but every generation has their own. So I strongly encourage you, in order to be accountable with your message, to be very conscious of not using vocal detours. Be conscious of that. And what's going to happen going forward? You're going to hear other people doing it. You're going to almost, oh yeah, I get it. You're going to hear them now more than you realize. And you're going to catch yourself, I hope, and pause and take yourself to where you really want to go, because they become very bad habits. I remember seeing a very high level speaker at UNLV one time, and we came out after the presentation, and the first comment I heard someone speaking next to me said, he said, well, 216 times in his presentation. And the thing is, once you use the vocal detour, it's a crutch. You'll continue to use it because you've already welcomed it into your speaking. Another one that is be very careful about are what I call vocal disclaimers. Vocal disclaimers. These taint, again, message accountability. These taint your credibility to be the speaker on this subject, to be the person in the know. And we're talking about you're being the person in the know. So they give the listener permission not to trust what next comes out of your mouth. Do you want to be that speaker, that conveyor of a message? No. So some of the vocal disclaimers, and you'll be, once I give these to you, and these again are in your handbook, you'll hear them going forward for the rest of your life. I said, oh yeah, Senator Wiener mentioned that. Yeah. Be aware and be responsible through your message accountability to avoid using vocal disclaimers. And I'm going to give you an alternative, not just let you hang. Examples, in my opinion. I might not be the expert, but I could be mistaken, but, and then you speak, right? I'm not sure I have the answer, but I guess. I don't know much about this, but. Do you get a rhythm here? That you're giving them the permission not to believe you. You're giving them an out not to trust what you're about to say. And then you say, but, and then you speak. Well, maybe you don't have the answer. So replace the vocal disclaimer. Replace it. And the alternative is what I call softeners. These are word softeners. So these soften your remarks that you may not have the answer. So I'm just going to give you a sampling. And such softeners are the words could. It's not a fact. It's not set in stone. It could be this. Maybe it should be this. It might. It must. Probably. Possibly. As you hear those words, they all have different meanings. And all of them will influence your message accountability when you use them appropriately. So one of the, and again, prepare in advance, as I told you earlier, because that's essential to working your way through a lot of this. And so often you will be, especially in high visibility positions that you are in this role for sure. Sometimes you're going to experience trick questions, and you'll find, I played with this a little bit in the handbook, pages 41 to 45. I give you some examples, different kinds of questions and different kinds of answers. But the one technique that was very, very important in the last 2-year term, and I want you to pay attention to this because you're going to use this the rest of your life, is bridging. Bridging. Someone might ask you a question and you're not prepared to answer the question. It might have stinging language. You might not know the specific answer to that question. And what bridging does is it allows you to maintain your credibility and move to an answer that you are more experienced or prepared to answer. Does that sound like a nice alternative? And still be, again, accountable for your message. So what bridging does is it allows you to move from the question as asked. And the key is that you address the substance of the question, but not maybe the way it's presented. There might be a stinging word. And what typically happens, people will, out of fear or the emotion of the moment, or maybe not being prepared, which you can't prepare in advance for a lot of this, they may start their answer with the word, no, that's not what I meant, or that's not what we're doing, or that's not what I said. No, they start with no. When you start with the word no, you're starting below zero. And it takes a lot of energy and a lot of effort to get to neutral, let alone build to the positive answer you want to share. So what did I say earlier, Youth Legislator Lynn? We pause, don't we? Pause so that you can regain control of the exchange where you now have the opportunity to share the answer that you want to go on the record with. So rather than saying, no, that isn't the focus of our project, and then you say, this is what we're focusing on, what would the alternative be? Pause. This is what we're focusing on. So you're addressing the substance of the question without having to defend against how the question is brought to you, and taking that message accountability to the level of what you have the capacity to be on the record with as you present your answer. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? And so that's a lot of information as a kind of a summary of what's in your handbook. I certainly encourage, though it's dated, it's old, the principles live today. I wrote it so that it would not be outdated at any time. So where are we on time? Need to move on. Could I ask any question real quick? Does anybody have a question or past? Okay, well, and I didn't turn my phone on, so obviously I wasn't ready. Anyway, what I offer to you, the entire Youth Legislature, if you have questions or curiosities, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'd be happy to respond. As you know, as you've been emailing me throughout the time since your inaugural training, I've been pretty quick to respond. Feel comfortable to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to help you work through it if you have questions or thoughts. Anyway, thank you all so very much.
Thank you for providing such great insights about mastering message accountability skills. We appreciate your presentation and your gift. For itinerary item number 3, I would like to welcome Senator Nguyen, Assembly Member Anderson, Assembly Member Cole, and Assembly Member Mosca to our training. Thank you for serving as group discussion leaders. We will break into discussion groups for 45 minutes. We will have 30 minutes to discuss the questions listed on the Legislator Discussion Groups document, and 15 minutes to take turns role-playing the scenarios. One youth legislator will take the role of a reporter, asking questions, and another youth legislator will play the part of a youth legislator. Please welcome any constructive suggestions offered by your colleagues and the legislator in your group. At 4:15, we will ask our legislators and group reporters to come to the witness table to provide a summary of the informative exchanges from their groups. Youth legislators received a playing card when entering the committee room today. Please look at your card to find the suit and the number on your card. The suit indicates your group, and the number indicates the question you will ask during the discussion. Please take the legislator discussion groups and scenarios documents with you. Diamonds are with Senator Wynne in room 164. Spades are in the audience area in Carson City with Assemblymember Anderson. Hearts are with Assemblymember Cole in the back of the audience area in this room. Clubs are with Assemblymember Mosca in the front of the audience area in this room. Please get into your groups and work through the discussion questions and the scenarios. Come back here at 4:15.
Chair Song, we're ready when you are.
We are back for summaries of the discussions. Senator Nguyen, please join Youth Legislator Parikh for a summary of discussion questions 1 and 5. Senator Nguyen, do you have anything to add?
Youth Legislator Parikh needs to give the summary first. Thank you.
Okay, so we had lots of good discussions in our group. We went over all of the questions. I feel like some of the biggest things that stood out to me was how Senator Nguyen really highlighted the importance of having a team and working with people when communicating, because really the most important thing is that you can't succeed without a team. And if you don't have a good team to follow through, you'll get nowhere, essentially. And then in our scenarios, we went over all of those questions and we had a good discussion on how policy really gets passed and like how we can implement these policies by including everybody and ensuring that everybody gets a voice. So we talked about when you have the opportunity to meet with government officials, what is your message? So one of the things that we talked about then was that we want to ensure that the youth, like we are the youth and we're talking to all these people. And when we talk to the people in our youth and in our districts, we're ensuring that every single person has a voice, because even though it's just 21 of us who are the youth legislators, it's however many thousand youth that's in the youth of Nevada. And when we go with and present to government officials, we need to include the entire voice of Nevada. And that's why I said.
Senator Nguyen, do you have anything to add?
I think that was a really good summary. You know, each of you are one of 21, just like I'm one of 21 in the Senate as well. But more importantly, in the legislative process, you're only one vote and there are 63 total like legislators. So you really can't do any one piece of policy. You can't pass a single bill. You can't pass a budget. You can't do that without a majority of your colleagues on board to do that. And in some circumstances, you need 2/3 of those body to come to the table and vote on anything that is costing money. So I would reiterate that, you know, it's super important to listen, work together as best you can, and then also follow through. And I know I'm stealing Assemblymember Mosca's like mantra, but it is 100% important to follow through. You say you're going to do something, follow through with that. Even if it's to tell someone that you couldn't figure out and you couldn't solve their problem, I think following through and making sure that you have that communication will build those relationships moving forward. And having that trust, having that like open line of communication is super important in being effective. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Moving to the north, Assemblymember Anderson, please join Youth Legislator Hart at the witness table for a summary of discussion questions 2 and 5.
I think the biggest thing that we discussed for questions 2 and 5 is I think the biggest thing that we discussed for questions 2 and 5 was probably making sure that you know what you're talking about, and like if being prepared to answer questions, as well as surrounding yourself with a good group of people that will support you in when you're speaking and in your like ideas.
Assemblymember Anderson, do you have anything to add?
I think you said that beautifully. That was basically what our entire conversation was about, was just, it is all about, exactly as the senator stated, working with your colleagues and trying to figure out how to get the best solution for so many situations. And I will also be stealing Assemblymember Mosca's follow through, follow through, follow through. Thank you.
Thank you. Assemblymember Cole and Youth Legislator Rios, would you please come to the witness table for a summary of discussion questions 3 and 5?
From our discussion, we covered multiple different things based on questions 3 and 5. One of the things that we talked about was the first step in building trust, which is listening to your audience, working to get to the real issue that they want to bring up to you, and having a diverse audience with multiple perspectives. Regarding question 5, one of the things that Assemblymember Cole spoke to us about was that she went to law school in her 40s, graduated, and is a small business owner here in Nevada. She owns a real estate land company, and on 9/11, while she was working, she heard about a plane, which was specifically Flight 93, that crashed only 7 miles from her house. So it was a really impactful story that she gave us there.
Assemblymember Cole, do you have anything to add?
Thank you very much. I think you did a great job of summarizing. I just want to say thank you very much for all of you and your commitment to this process, and for learning and wanting to represent people. It's a founding of our country, right? Representative government. And so it is really important for you to take it very seriously. And so I'm happy to be here. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Assemblymember Mosca, please join your group reporter at the witness table for a summary of discussion questions 4 and 5.
For questions 4 and 5, we talked about, mainly for 4, we talked about being able to talk to both sides and see what both of them, well, there are both opinions, and express what you feel and explain why you feel that way and why you voted on whatever it is you voted. And for question 5, she quoted, "Success is not a straight line, success is a zigzag." She mentioned how it was hard to get where she is today, and although she seems in a wonderful position, she is just like us, a normal person who lives a normal life just like us. And although it seems as if she didn't have any challenges throughout her life, she did have multiple challenges and multiple no's, and that made her better and stronger.
Assemblymember Mosca, do you have anything to add?
Thank you. I thought that was so great. Thank you so much. I just wanted to thank everybody again and really tell you message accountability is something that a lot of folks, whether they're young people or adults or professionals, they don't always think about. So even by thinking about it today, you're going to be really impactful and effective in whatever you're working on. And just remember that you are the most prepared you are because you're here for the right reasons. So thank you for being part of the Youth Legislature.
Thank you for your summaries, and thank you to the legislators joining us today for taking the time to participate in this training with us. We appreciate your wisdom and insight about mastering message accountability skills. We will now move on to itinerary item 6, NYL alumni suggestions regarding mastering message accountability skills. Today, we will hear from former youth legislators Ethan Foster and Dr. Jan Okuda Lim. Before we begin, would each of you please tell us one significant way the NYL has enriched your lives beyond your participation in the program? Mr. Foster, we'll start with you.
Thank you. It's an honor to speak to all of you, and it's always great to connect and reconnect with Dr. Zanakuda Lim. Congratulations on your doctorate, by the way. I know that's late in coming, and Senator Valerie Weiner. I have to say the relationships that I formed as a youth legislator have been immensely important to me. Being able to pick up the phone and talk to Senator Weiner and count her as a mentor, and the friends that you'll see perhaps on your handouts. Dr. Zanakuda Lim and I overlapped in one of the years that he served, and it was a real blessing to get to know him through that. And to see us, that we both came back to Nevada and want to give back to the program, just signals and should signal to you that it was greatly formative to both of us. And we just want to pass what we learned on to you to the extent that we can. It's hard to encapsulate in words, but if there's one word that Senator Weiner has always reminded me to focus on and meditate on, it's gratitude, and it is gratitude that brings me here.
Thank you. Dr. Okuda Lim, please let us know how the NYL enriched your life.
Thank you very much, Chair Song, and good afternoon, youth legislators. Good afternoon, Mr. Foster. It's so good to see you and connect. I'm here in the NYL training, and I echo everything that you said. I think back to my first term on the youth legislature when you served as our chair, and it was such a great privilege to both learn from you and your leadership of our cohort during my first year, and then also be able to apply what I learned from you and from all our colleagues when I served as chair and had that privilege the following year. So it's so great to see you. And to Mr. Foster's point, the NYL has meant a lot to me in terms of my own professional development, my academic development, but more importantly, I would say it's those connections, those interpersonal relationships, getting to know colleagues, getting to know Senator Weiner, getting to know the staff from the Legislative Council Bureau, the legislators themselves, and have these lifelong connections and bonds that I've taken with me. I hope, Mr. Foster, you don't mind, but I was in Carson City maybe about a year or two ago, and I was part of a team from the RAND Corporation meeting with staff from the Nevada Department of Education about some research we were doing with the state. And we were getting lunch during our break at the Basil, the Thai restaurant in Carson City. And Mr. Foster happened to be there, I think with a colleague of yours, and you were in town on business. And I was so immersed in the conversation with my RAND colleagues, I didn't notice you at first, but when we had a break, you came up and said hello, and it was such a joy to see you. And I was explaining to my colleagues afterwards, they were like, "Whoa, who are you talking to?" And I said, "That was Ethan Foster. We served together on this program called the Nevada Youth Legislature. And now, as you were mentioning, you're here at home in our state, serving our state through your legal work as an attorney. I'm back home working in education policy. And that's just an example of how the bonds and friendships that you form with your colleagues will last well beyond your term on the youth legislature. So echoing Senator Wiener, in the spirit of gratitude, I'm grateful for the friendships and the opportunities I've had to meet peers and colleagues and others I might not have otherwise met. Because we were on the youth legislature and overlap, that's why Mr. Foster and I had an opportunity to meet and remain connected now, years after our experiences in your shoes. So I'm full of gratitude, and I'm grateful to be joining Mr. Foster in our conversation this afternoon.
Thank you. I think we are ready to proceed with the discussion. Youth Legislator Carminati Martinez, I believe you have a question for Dr. Akudalim. Please proceed.
Thank you, Youth Legislator Song. My first question for you, Dr. Lim, would be, what does message accountability mean to you?
Thank you very much, Youth Legislator Carminati Martinez, for that question. It's a really big question, but I think my response will set the stage for some detailed responses I hope I have an opportunity to share a little bit later. Ultimately, the term message accountability means owning what you communicate in whatever form, written, spoken, body language, what have you. Owning that message in all of its forms and having integrity to what you share and what you communicate. Part of the training that you will be receiving in future meetings of the youth legislature involve skills like active listening, constituent outreach, negotiation skills, and all of those will help you during your term as a youth legislator and beyond, as I was alluding to, in owning what you say and what you communicate, helping you to know your audience and communicate in a way that is responsive to that audience and allows you to maximize your potential to get your point across, to share your message and honor the time that the other party, the audience member, the person with whom you're communicating, honor the time that they've given you to hear and receive your message. That's ultimately what I think message accountability means. It's being aware of what you're sharing, taking the lessons you've learned from Senator Wiener and the lessons you'll continue to learn throughout your experience and applying that in all the ways you communicate. I want to emphasize, as you learned earlier today, only a fraction of what you communicate comes from the words themselves that you share. So much of it can come across through your body language, through other ways that you share your interest or not, or come across as understanding or listening or not. So being aware of that, realizing when you might not be fully present in the moment, and then giving yourself the grace to acknowledge that and say, I was zoning out, I was tuning out, but I'm going to get back in here and I'm going to listen and be attentive. Being aware of that about yourself will give you the starting point to hold yourself accountable to your communication and to your message.
Thank you, Dr. Akudalim. Youth Legislator Keeley, do you have questions for Mr. Foster?
Thank you, Youth Legislator Song. My question for Mr. Foster is, what is your greatest fear when delivering an important message to others, and how do you overcome this fear?
That's an excellent question, Youth Legislator Keeley. And I'm going to try and answer it, but I want to agree with everything that you just heard about what message accountability means, because there's another side to it, right? It's you're also accountable for being a good listener too. And in communicating and listening, these are just two aspects of the same process. I guess my greatest fear all the time is being unclear or being misunderstood in a way that ends up accidentally causing unintended consequences, right? You cannot be responsible for how what you say is interpreted to, its final conclusion, but you can be responsible for the truthness of what you're saying, the integrity with which you say it, And to some extent, you are responsible for a reasonable interpretation of what you're saying. Now, why am I choosing those words so carefully? Because as a lawyer, it often happens that one lawyer will send an email to another lawyer who is opposing counsel on a case. It's very easy for an opposing counsel to either misunderstand what you say because you weren't clear in the first place, or to try and find a way to misunderstand it. Now, you can't be responsible for how someone wants to interpret your message, but you can be responsible and accountable for what you actually say. Another thing that inspires fear, I think a healthy fear, right? Because there's such a thing as unhealthy fear. But I think the healthy kind of fear is to consider anything that you write down and send to somebody might be read by a judge. And you may not know it at the time. It could be an email about something entirely innocuous. But there's this thing in cases called discovery, and it dredges communications into the light of a courtroom. And in that moment, everyone is at some level held to account for what they said. So I'm very careful when I write. I'm not just writing to the person that I'm intending to write to. I'm also writing to the person I'm not intending to write to. Someone who maybe just got airdropped into the conversation. How might this come across? Tone is very hard to communicate in an email. Maybe I shouldn't send an email. Maybe I should pick up the phone. As Dr. Zanakuda Lim pointed out, there's so much more in communication than just the word that is spoken or written. Maybe if I write this down, it's going to be taken the wrong way. Maybe if I have a conversation, it'll be clear from my tone, and if it's face-to-face, my facial expressions, what it is I'm trying to say, because I'm trying to build a relationship. Every time you communicate with someone, you are trying to build a relationship with them, right? And whether we're conscious of it or not, that is what's happening. So yes, you're supposed to care about and be accountable for what you say, and do it with integrity. But also consider what the thing you are saying is having, what effect that is having on the relationship itself. And that can be a lot to juggle. But I think if it's coming from that place of sincerity, wanting to tell the truth and wanting to be clear, that already removes a ton of possible mistakes and errors. Come at it with the right spirit, and you'll usually get the outcome that you're looking for. And so how do I overcome this fear? That was the second half of your question. Ultimately, like I hinted at the beginning of my answer, there is a limit to what I can control when I communicate. I can't entirely control how someone will receive a thing, but I can do the best to be as clear, as kind, and as generous a listener as I can be, so that if what I say is misunderstood, it's much easier to fix that and repair that. I can't tell you how many times I end an email with, if you have any questions or if anything that I just said is unclear, please call me. Because I want everyone to know there's an open door. Every email is not the end of a conversation. It's just another piece of it. So if something was left out, or if something I said raises new questions, pick up that phone, call me. Maybe we should have coffee. Think about it. But that's how I overcome the fear, is I keep the dialogue open. And 9 times out of 10, just doing that makes it so much easier to be accountable, both as a communicator and as a listener. So I think that would be my answer.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. Youth Legislator Lee, I believe you have questions for Dr. Akuda Lim.
Thank you, Youth Legislator Song. Dr. Akuda Lim, what is the most important component of building trust with people who are reading or listening to your message, and how do you actually integrate that into your message development?
Yes, thank you very much for that question, Youth Legislator Lee. So to the first component, what's the most important part of building trust with people with whom I'm communicating? It's a theme that we've been sharing with you since your inaugural training, and that is the importance, and you've heard it from Mr. Foster as well, the importance of being honest and holding yourself, your actions, your words, your communication in truth. Something I remember from when I went through the NYL training when I was in your shoes was learning about how different constituents or groups or lobbyists communicate with legislators. And you have multiple different folks trying to communicate and get their message across. And one of the speakers we had, it may have been Jeanette Bells, perhaps, who shared this, who's been a lobbyist and is trusted in the building for sure. Something she shared with us was that you can spend years, multiple sessions, multiple elections, having to meet with multiple lawmakers and other folks who might agree with you and folks who might disagree with you. You spend years building relationships with these decision makers and holding yourself in honesty and truth in everything that you do and having that integrity with your communications. But the one time, the one moment you slip from that, you're not fully honest. You're not fully communicating the truth. You're not being open and transparent with your colleagues. The one instance that you break that trust, it might be virtually impossible to ever regain that 100%. You might apologize, you might come clean, acknowledge that mistake, but from then on, everyone's always going to have a little doubt in the back of their mind about anything that you say because you broke that trust that had taken years to build up. So I think the most important component for building that trust is being honest. As you heard from Senator Wiener earlier, when you're communicating, that means holding yourself to sharing the truth and being as honest about what you know and what you can share in that moment. You heard that from Mr. Foster when he is communicating with colleagues, with opposing attorneys or counsel. Those communications can come up to a judge, they can come up in discovery, they can come up in other conversations. And you want to know that you have had the integrity of holding yourself to the truth and being honest so that no matter what happens, you know that you've stayed true to what you want to communicate. The other point I want to bring up to that is in moments where you might not have an answer. I'm reinforcing a point you heard from Senator Wiener earlier. If you do not have an answer or you might not know the facts, the open and honest and truthful answer is to say, you do not know the answer. You do not know those facts. And you will do your part to look into it, look up the information, and get back to that person. You heard that from Assemblymember Mosca and her colleagues. If you say you don't know something, look into it. And when you say you're going to get back to that person and answer their question, you need to follow through. That's part of holding yourself to integrity. If you say you're going to do something, you need to do it. And the last point to that is, if for some reason you are not able to follow through, the moment you know you are not able to follow through with something, you need to tell that other person and be honest with them. It comes up even in my own professional work. There are times where we might give an estimate, we might use a softening word, as you heard from Senator Wiener. I'll explain in just a little bit. We might get a question from a legislator asking, hey, do you have an answer to this question, or have you looked at these data? And if we have not, we will be honest and say, we have not, and we will look into it and get back to you, and we should be able to do that by the end of the week. And let's say we don't have all the data, or maybe it'll take a little bit more time. As soon as we realize we will not be able to hold ourselves to that end of week deadline, we will let that legislator and their staff know as soon as possible. We will apologize and say it's going to take us a little bit more time, but we want to let you know. Don't let the deadline come about and then you get an email saying, hey, I thought you were going to give me an answer. Where's the answer? So that's holding yourself to truth and integrity. In terms of how to integrate this into message development, I think I've I've partially answered that in my response to the first question. A point I want to build upon from Mr. Foster's answer is around written communication. And you heard this from Senator Wiener. Much of what you learned this afternoon was in the context of perhaps in-person or face-to-face interaction, or at least a context in which you can see the other person, their body language, their facial expressions. I want to reinforce the points around written communication, because when you're emailing your colleagues, when you're emailing Senator Wiener, Ms. Ashdown, when you're emailing your senators, your assembly members, other community leaders or decision makers, what you put in that email or any other written communication will definitely live on, because it might get forwarded to folks you did not intend to receive that message. Or perhaps you mistyped the email, or your email account enters in someone else's email, you hit send, and suddenly it's now living on to someone you did not intend to send that communication to. So I want to reinforce that all the lessons you've learned about tone, about word choice, about good grammar, communication, formatting, organization, all of those skills are directly applicable to nonverbal means of communication. The reflection I have from this, and I'll share it in the interest of transparency. Before I joined the youth legislature, this is my sophomore year of high school, I served as the chair of the Clark County School District Student Advisory Committee. And there was an issue where one of the members had missed some meetings and had not done their makeup work. And my responsibility was to reach out to that member, my colleague, and check in with them and remind them what they had to do because they missed some meetings. Now, how did I go about that? I sent a very sternly worded email with some stinging words in it, because I was very upset that this member had missed all of these meetings when they had committed to this opportunity. And I put things in bold. I think some of the words I put into a larger font size. It came across as, to me, it was, I was trying to be formal and official, but it came across as very stern and rude. And I had CC'd our advisor for that committee. Right after I sent that email, our advisor actually called me and said, Zahn, what you just sent, how would you feel if you received that email? How would you feel if you had been in your colleague's situation and received that email? And that gave me pause. And I had to reflect on how I was not holding myself to my own integrity if that's not a message I would be willing to receive from someone else. How could I pass that on to one of my colleagues? We're colleagues on this committee. And I very soon thereafter got in touch with my colleague, and I apologized for my tone. And that's a lesson I've taken with me all of these years later. So all the lessons and skills that you've learned and will continue to learn about communication and listening, those apply to all forms of communication, not just spoken, not just in person or virtual, but also written and all other forms of communication.
Chair, we're going to have to conclude this part of the training in the interest of time. And please go on, close out this itinerary item, thanking our wonderful NYL alumni for participating.
Thank you, Mr. Foster and Dr. Akuda Lim. We appreciate your time and your suggestions regarding mastering message accountability skills. The next order of business is item 7, which is a preview of upcoming NYL activities and trainings. Today, we received training regarding mastering message accountability skills. You will find a document that explains our paired activity and lists who we are paired with in your meeting folder. On the back of this document, there is a list of youth legislator phone numbers. If your number is not listed and you would like it to be listed for future paired activities, please send an email to Tina Ashdown, informing her of your preferred phone number. For this paired activity, it will be your responsibility to reach out to your paired youth legislator. Between now and the end of the day on Saturday, September 20th, 2025, we will have the opportunity to connect with the youth legislator in our pair to discuss message accountability. Our 3 questions and answers assignment is due on or before October 4th, 2025. Ms. Ashdown will send a fillable PDF to make it easier to send the completed assignment to Senator Wiener, Ms. Ashdown, and your district legislators. Our next training is scheduled for October 15th, 2025. We will learn about optimizing listening skills. I look forward to sharing this learning adventure with you. I will turn the training over to Senator Wiener for itinerary item 8, questions, comments, and discussion.
Thank you very much, Chair Song. We only have a few minutes before we part for this amazing first monthly training. You all were extraordinary, and there may be some things that you're processing based on the 3 hours that we spent together that you might be incubating and you might have questions about. So we have a few minutes to respond to any questions you might have, so you don't leave with those question marks, floating in your consciousness. Does anyone have any comment about what today's experience, how it resonated with you, any questions, any clarifications that you might be seeking? So we can start in the north if anyone in the north has something that you want to share, and certainly in the south. Again, we only have a few minutes, but we want to include you and kind of mirror what we want you to do with the people you serve by getting their feedback or input to the experiences that you've shared. So does anyone have any question that you from the day or thoughts you would like to share before we part company? In the north? Yeah, I can't see that, so I don't see the screen. Okay,
Youth
yes,
Legislator
in the north.
Sullivan?
Yes, Sullivan. Yeah, thank you.
Hello, I just want to say thank you to everyone who ran for some office today, even if you didn't get elected. It takes a lot to put yourself out there. I know this sounds cliche, but cliches have been said so many times become cliche because they were true. And because of this, thank you guys for coming out and showing the courage to give a speech. Even if you didn't get elected, it still makes you look good to everyone and inspires everyone, hopefully, that they could do stuff like that in the future on their own, not just within the confines of this program, but in other things they might do.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else? Anything stand out from today? Anybody want to share a key point of what you learned? Or something that, yes, Youth Legislator Rios.
I just would like to note how all of today has really shown to me, and I hope to my fellow youth legislators, the importance of being an authentic leader and speaking the words that you truly mean.
And I didn't hear the first part. How, what, with authenticity and speaking the words that you really mean?
How being an authentic person, an authentic leader, and speaking the words that you mean.
But what was the question about that? How you do that, or?
He's just making a comment.
Oh, that was an observation, the authenticity of a leader. Yeah, thank you. And I've been teaching virtual classes this week to students throughout Clark County about leadership and service and so on. And that's something that shows up a lot with the young people in Southern Nevada, probably statewide, is what are the qualities of a leader? And one that's showing up is authenticity, and then others, integrity, openness, willingness to learn what you don't know and doing something about it. So authenticity is often at the top of the list among your constituents that I'm visiting in classrooms. Anyone else?
Nevada Youth.
youth legislator Evelyn Aguirre, I just like to say that I learned that although you need to be professional, you also need to be relatable to your audiences and just to be on time and saying your purpose of what is saying your purpose and also saying what's true and just to be honest with the next step.
So the integrity piece is big, isn't it? Yeah. And honoring those you serve. And in that is honoring yourself. Honoring yourself. And what I often teach, coming to any experience, to have passion, purpose, intention, and commitment. And they all have to align. And when all of those passion, purpose, intention, and commitment are in alignment, then you can take effective, proactive actions that produce amazing, proactive, positive outcomes. Passion, purpose, intention, commitment, then action and outcome. So thank you for that. Anyone else? North? South? Okay, thank you.
Does everybody understand the
paired activity? And the thing is, if you don't hear from your pair partner, then you reach out to them. Don't wait. If there's something that gets in the way of hearing from your partner, then you take the initiative. That's why contact information is there for both of you. Reach out. And what we found through this activity, we used to do it during the training. We give you 10 minutes and it's yak, yak, yak and a lot of noise. But this allows you to grow relationships with people you might not have conversations with otherwise. And amazing friendships have grown through the paired activities. So
youth legislator.
Oh, okay, please. Yeah, again, I can't see the noise. So.
She's right there.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at everybody and not seeing anyone specifically. Please share.
Just one question about the paired activity. Do we have to submit anything or just like have the conversation?
Conversation. Okay.
And we'll talk about it.
Yeah, yeah. And we'll do a debrief on that. What did you learn? How did you grow? We'll have a conversation around it next time once you've done it. Okay, looks like Chair, turn it over to you.
That concludes the training for today. Thank you, everyone.